Yeah. After a great day of fantastic panels and amazing information and exchanges of ideas, we're now going to summarize all the panels. And to prove that multi-stakeholderism works, we're going to present 2 or 3 takeaways from each panel. In order to save time, Mike Nelson's going to give them all. Just kidding.
Channel through the hat.
So I was going to do it, yeah, I think I'll do this in order. So our first panel, our 1115A panel, Truth and Trolls. What are the best 2 ways we can deal with toxic speech while at the same time protecting free speech?
Yes, we discussed a large number of kind of use cases. Who is trolling, who is not? How can we protect free speech? I think that the best outcomes we came up with was figuring out how to create the community you want and be very intentional about creating the norms to self-police trolling and to be an active participant as well. Obviously, that doesn't address all use cases, but that was the one we figured out.
Very good. Our next panel report will be about critical internet resources. What are our 2 takeaways from our IANA update?
Well, I've got 5 or 6 actually.
So fast. I followed the rules.
Do like the audience questions to combine them all into one statement and then call it one question.
All right, this is Matthew Shears. Steve Del Bianco is probably on a plane for Paris at the moment, so he asked me to do this. And our rapporteur is Stephanie Duchesneau. So I think I'll just highlight 2. There's a shared belief across the US government and the ICANN community members represented that undertaking the IANA transition was the right decision and that the timing around the transition was appropriate given the maturation of the ICANN community. And the other key one is that expectations are that this transition won't happen until the second half of 2016. While that places this transition on the list of possible topics in the US presidential and congressional campaigns, we feel confident that the community transition proposals can withstand campaign rhetoric and scrutiny. So we aren't afraid of the political calendar and should take the time to get this transition right.
Very good. 1115 AM C, Digital Trade Agreements as a Strategy for Internet Governance. What are our 2 or 3 top takeaways from that?
Well, just before that, I apologize for how cold this room is. Our takeaways are that while provisions on the free flow of information might be great for the internet, they also raise lots of questions, and including questions about human rights, about governance. We need greater clarity as to what are digital protectionist measures, and that's what I'd say our takeaway is.
Great. 1115D, Global Solutions for an Ethical Internet of Things Built on Trust and Security. Dan, what would you say the top 3 takeaways are?
Top 3 takeaways, obvious. The Internet of Things is global, and the Internet of Things is new. We're at the beginning of the beginning, and being that it's global in nature, and we're at IGF-USA, but there needs to be recognition that different parts of the world with different legislation, cultures, values, and habits. That's first takeaway. Second takeaway is, privacy and security are inseparable, but we really need to focus on the security side and focus on uses of data and not be technology neutral, but not demonize systems and networks. And the third takeaway is that as we begin this discussion in IGF, that ethical innovation or ethical solutions need to be practical and they need to be voluntary.
Very good. Now on to our afternoon breakout sessions. This is a question I posed on Twitter earlier in the week. Mike Nelson, can the internet cause too much disruption?
We were a very disruptive panel, and we learned a few things that we can apply for next year's IGF. The first one is if you put a paper bag over one of the panelists' head and you offer door prizes, people will hang around to the end to find out what the door prizes are. When they find out that they are tinfoil hats, they will force the moderator to wear them. But seriously, a couple of key questions were, is innovation causing too much disruption? The answer was no. The second question was that the right question? The answer was no. And we started asking other questions like, can government do more to help people deal with disruption? Lots of good discussion about that. Lots of good discussion about how culture can help people deal with disruption, and also how technology like social networks can give people the support structure and the access to retraining and resources that they need so that if they're a taxi cab driver displaced by Uber, they have other opportunities. So it was a very rich discussion, and I thank the 4 panelists who made it very, very worthwhile. And I've got an extra tinfoil hat.
Okay, very good. Anybody in the audience want a tinfoil hat? See us after the. Yeah, everyone's got one. Okay. 2 o'clock B, maintaining trust online. This dealt with cybersecurity, encryption, backdoors, and privacy. John, what are our top 2 or 3 takeaways?
Well, 3 things I heard are we talked about some growing use of encryption in certain forms and how it is increasing protection for users, although still not perfect. So it has limitations. A second thing we talked about is how law enforcement and intelligence agencies are concerned about going dark, about how this technology may make it difficult for them to do their job. And we talked about how the exact same technology that does that is also the technology that protects people from other kinds of threats. One interesting thing we did not talk about is the magic solution that would make both the FBI and the users of that technology deliriously happy. But I think if we'd had another 10 minutes, it would have come up.
Very good. Next year, we'll have to build in another 10 minutes. Okay. 2 o'clock, panel C, the WSIS plus 10 and beyond. What are the top 3 takeaways that will tell us how we can enhance multi-stakeholder engagement?
Thank you, Peter Dengate Thrush. So we looked, we got 3. The importance, first of all, of breaking open discussions to the relevantly affected people. And we noted how that had occurred at the original WSIS, opening up to civil society, business, tech, academia. And we noted the important role that the US government had played in leading that opening up. And the same kind of a concept applies to the opening up of discussion between the different silos. And we saw how some of that was working and how this is at the heart of the multi-stakeholder model, bringing the relevantly affected people into a policy debate. And noting as we went that it's, because there'd been some discussion about whether multi-stakeholder was an ism or not, and noting that supporting multi-stakeholderism didn't necessarily mean opposing multilateralism or opposing the role of governments, using the right tools for the right technology, and the view was that multi-stakeholderism is absolutely the right technique for this technology. The second one is noting that there's much more to the WSIS review than simply extending the IGF. It's all about carefully reviewing all of the WSIS outcomes, the action lines, the role of ICTs, and noting that done properly, ICTs have this enormous power to improve sanitation, education, productivity, and living standards across the planet. And so we don't want to get trapped when we're talking about this into simply thinking it's about the IANA transition or any other semantic exercise. It's a very important thing that we're looking at the whole of the global ICT work that's going on at the UN. And lastly, we should take some pride, take lots of pride, in fact, in the astonishing achievements in internet in general, but in internet governance in particular. Looking back over 10 years, what extraordinary advances. The obvious, the Facebook, no YouTube 10 years ago, no smartphones, and of course a very baby ICANN and other institutions, and how much stronger all of those things are. And we finished in relation to that as to where you should take this pride. It's to participate in the State Department consultations that are going on, And there was a very strong call from action to make sure you participate in your national IGFs via the institutions such as ISOC, ICANN, IETF, and the IRs. And there is a timetable available. There's a printed timetable. It looks like this. If you want to get involved, and we want you to, this will show you where and how to do it. Thanks.
It's a wrap. Thank you all. Before we close, I'd like to thank our sponsors one more time for their generous support and our volunteers, particularly Grace Song and Alexa Smith, Rommel. Thank you all so much. And instead of making long closing speeches, we'd rather you came and eat the food we paid for, which is around the corner in the Continental Ballroom. Please enjoy the reception. Please come to the reception and enjoy. Thank you all for coming. What is the content?